everyone. Welcome back to Inspiring Animals. This month, we're going to be talking to you about scarlet macaws. So, I'm Kayla Windlespecht, and I'm here with my dad, Michael Windlespecht. And we're really excited to talk to you about the scarlet macaw and what makes these birds so special, and some of the challenges and complications that are faced when it comes to the conservation and protection of these birds in the wild. So, first of all, what is a scarlet macaw? Now, most of you have probably at least heard of a scarlet macaw before. These are these very large, bright red and yellow and blue parrots that are found in Central America and South America. And in this series so far, we've actually talked a lot about more solitary animals. We've talked about jaguars, we've talked about harpy eagles, but scarlet macaws are, like most parrots, they're actually very, very social animals. So scarlet macaws will live in these very large groups, these flocks of up to a couple dozen individuals, actually. And the role that scarlet macaws play in the rainforest is that they eat a lot of primarily fruits and seeds. They have these really powerful beaks that can actually crack open these seeds and nuts that they find. And so they're very important for spreading these seeds in the rainforest and contributing to the ecology of the rainforest. And so, like we've previously mentioned, scarlet macaws do have a very, very large range. So, they're found primarily in the tropics, in tropical rainforests, and they're found through Central America and into a lot of South America, or at least they used to be found throughout Central America. And this does get into what I think we are going to be talking about a lot today, which is the really interesting story of scarlet macaw conservation. And so, just to kind of paint a picture of why scarlet macaw conservation is so complicated, to start off, scarlet macaws as a species are not actually listed as endangered. They're not listed as endangered and they're not listed as threatened. Their population is currently declining, as are the populations of many, many rainforest species. But scarlet macaws are actually listed as least concern at the moment. And this is primarily because they have such a large range. There are scarlet macaws found in many, many countries, in many, many areas, and over a very, very large tract of land. And so their population, especially in South America, is actually doing pretty well. But this is the South American population. And in Central America, it's actually a bit of a different story. So in South America, it's estimated that there could be tens of thousands of scarlet macaws there, possibly hundreds of thousands of scarlet macaws as a broad range for their population. And in Central America, it's estimated that the population of scarlet macaws is under 1,000. So this is something that we're going to be talking about today. And I think to start it off, we might talk a little bit about some of our own experiences with scarlet macaws and working with scarlet macaws with our partners down in Belize and the chances we might have had or might have missed, as it might be, to see some scarlet macaws in the wild in Central America.
Yeah, Kayla, we've had a great experience with scarlet macaws, mostly through our partnership with the Belize Zoo initially. I remember one of my first experiences, or anybody's first experiences, they come to inside the zoo, is they see this giant scarlet macaw habitat. And they're very animated birds, being very, parrots.
They're very talkative, yes.
Very talkative, yes. They and very, very food motivated. Let's put it that way. And big, bright, beautiful birds. So it's hard to miss them as you first come in. And so it's very interesting when you first see a scarlet macaw. First of all, their size. I'm sure you're going to talk about this. They are very, very large. They have a massive wingspan for a parrot. Yeah, Kayla, we've had some great experiences with our partners in Belize talking about scarlet macaws. And one of those, of course, is our partners at the Belize Zoo. which has a fantastic exhibit for scarlet macaws just as you enter inside the zoo, which is really, really great because they're this big, beautiful bird. They have a massive wingspan, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, and they are very, very animated. One of the things I like best about these birds is the fact that they're very interactive with humans and with other people. So they're always up against the fence. They're chattering at you. They are having, they're trying to get your attention, obviously for food. They're food motivated.
They're very social. They're very social birds.
They're very social. They're not so social with each other sometimes in a habitat. Some of these, they have to have several separate habitats there because some of them don't get a little ornery around each other. But you're right when you mentioned before that in the wild, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on, some of our experiences in the wild with them, they move around these big flocks. In the zoo, they get a little bit more territorial with each other. And that's probably also a little bit of food motivation, okay, or attention motivation. One of the things I like best about macaws, which is unfortunate in some ways, is the fact that they do have the ability to use human words to get attention. Okay.
When they want to. When I do know there have been a couple times when we've sat there trying to get them to speak on camera and they just refuse to do it. They can, they just.
And then you're walking down the path and they yell something at you and you're like, really?
Of course. As soon as the cameras go off.
And there's all sorts of stories about macaws and that, imprinting and interaction with humans. One of my favorite experiences that got me involved with scarlet macaws was we went down to Red Bank, which is in the southern part of Belize, to go photograph the scarlet macaw population down there. Red Bank is a very interesting place because it's a Mayan community. I know we often think of the Mayans as, being gone like the Incas, but the Mayans are very much a population of people in Belize and Guatemala. And Red Bank is one of these places, and they have a giant red scarlet macaw viewing area there. You can go and see these big flocks of scarlet macaws move back and forth between their roosting areas and then back to their feeding areas because they do migrate. And the time we went there had been a tropical wave coming through, and we saw no scarlet macaws. Anyways, we saw none. There was no scarlet macaws. We saw pictures of what they had seen the day before, which was 50 and 60 of these birds at a time inside of these trees. But we did not see any in the wild, except for a few flying overhead. We've also had a little bit of experience, though, which has been fun, in different parts of the country, running into more isolated pairs of macaws, or 3 or 4 of them at a time in a tree. One of them was on Sleeping Giant Resort, where there's a group of them which come through there to feed a smaller group and then move through. So they are moving through these areas, and they are absolutely majestic to see. Very, very large parrots in flight, and their beautiful coloration is something that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they really are very beautiful, very, very beautiful birds. So all of our interactions with scarlet macaws have been in Central America, and all of my particular interactions with scarlet macaws, as Dad has mentioned, have been at the Belize Zoo. I've actually never seen scarlet macaws in the wild. Seen plenty of other birds. I've seen many toucans in Belize. There are toucans everywhere in Belize. But scarlet macaws, not so much. And this does tie back a bit to what we were talking about earlier with the challenges facing the scarlet macaw population in Central America. So Belize is actually one of the strongholds of the scarlet macaw population in Central America. And this is due in large part to the actions of organizations such as the Belize Zoo, and especially including the Belize Zoo founder, Sharon Matola, had a lot of interactions and conservation work specifically towards the scarlet macaw. And if you'd like to learn more about that particular story, there is actually a book about this called The Last Flight of the Scarlet Macaw. And I'm sure that we will have a link to where you can find this book in the description for this podcast.
I got to say that The Last Flight of the Scarlet Macaw really not only talks to you a little bit about the challenges facing macaws in Belize, but the historical basis of it with what Sharon Mottola, the founder of the zoo, and her early conservation efforts. And what's interesting about that was even scarlet macaws tend to nest near rivers, which I'm sure Kayla will tell you about in a few moments. And there was a dam project coming in, and they were worried about eliminating these macaws. They end up losing this, unfortunately, over time, this fight. But the result of it is that Sharon Mottola becomes very, very motivated to increase animal conservation and to expand her work with wildlife conservation in Belize. And indirectly or directly, as a result of that, actually becomes part of what founds the Belize Zoo. This is an amazing book. It's a great story. Last Flight of the Scarlet Macaw by Bruce Barcott. You can almost find it anywhere. I highly recommend it. As you want to understand what the conservation issues in Belize are, this is the one to read.
And one of the things that's talked about in this book is the issue in distinguishing between the South American population and the Central American population when it comes not only to conservation efforts, but to legal issues surrounding the protection of endangered and threatened species. So, as we've mentioned, scarlet macaws overall, the scarlet macaw population is doing okay. They're decreasing a little bit, but because they exist over such a large range and because there's estimated to be so many of them in South America, they are currently listed as least concern. Unfortunately, while the South American population is doing okay, the Central American population broadly is doing very, very badly. In Central America, scarlet macaws are actually believed to be locally extinct through most of their former range. This is a big reason why Belize is such a stronghold for them right now.
And so, what is the reason for that, Kayla? Why is the things different in Central America than it is in South America?
Well, one of the biggest reasons that we see is actually habitat fragmentation. So, habitat fragmentation is pretty much what it sounds like. It's when habitats, in this case, it would be the rainforest, get broken up into these small pieces. This is usually by human impact. This is usually by construction of roads or towns or clear cutting rainforest in order for agricultural use or what have you. And it breaks up these areas of rainforest into these smaller and smaller pieces. And the problem with that is that many animals cannot cross through these barriers. They can't cross through these open spaces, these roads, these agricultural fields, these towns that people live in, and so it traps these animals in these consistently decreasing areas of rainforest that may not be large enough to support their population. So, as the habitat fragments and as the available habitat gets smaller and smaller, it gets much harder for species such as the scarlet macaw to be able to find the habitat they need, to find the food that they need, and to be able to support a healthy population. So this habitat fragmentation is seen a lot in Central America and is negatively impacting a lot of rainforest species, including the scarlet macaw, and is driving scarlet macaws in many places to localized extinction, which is, again, exactly what it sounds like. It's when a animal that used to be found in a certain place is just not there anymore. So the species itself is not extinct, but it's just not in that area anymore. And unfortunately, this has been seen.
And we have seen that a little bit ourselves. In the short period of time we have been in Belize over the past, well, not even a short period of time, more than 10 or 15 years we've been there. There are places where we could go see scarlet macaws, and now we don't even see them come through anymore. And mostly because there has been human development. Not that scarlet macaws avoid humans, but normally when humans come in, I think they destroy the food trees and things like that they need to survive and the habitats. But it's very difficult now to see them except for in certain areas of the country and then during specific times.
Yeah.
They're moving back and forth, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. And another way that humans really badly impact the scarlet macaw population is actually through poaching. There's a lot of poaching, especially for the pet trade. There's poaching where people will go and actually take eggs out of the scarlet macaw nest to get the hatchlings to sell into the pet trade because these birds are, again, just so pretty and so beautiful. And this is really badly impacting their population. If you have a very small population to begin with, then you have someone going and taking eggs out of nest. You can understand why this would really hurt the scarlet macaws. So these are all.
I think part of the problem too is that these people is that it was that when they get scarlet macaws, they don't understand how big they're going to get.
Yes, they are. They are rather large birds.
Like small parrots.
Yes.
Really large animals.
Yes.
A lot of food, and can be their talons in other parts. They can be fairly aggressive. So
Yes, I believe several of the scarlet macaws at the Belize Zoo were actually rescued from the pet trade, which is illegal in Belize. It is considered poaching in Belize to take these birds. But even these animals who are very habituated to humans, we're always told, don't stick your fingers in the bars because if these birds, their beaks are so powerful, they can break your finger if they want to. If they think that you're giving them a treat or something, they can. They're very large, very very powerful birds. But yes, these are the issues being faced by the scarlet macaws in Central America. But adding to that is also the issue that, again, scarlet macaws are not listed as an endangered species. They're listed as a species of least concern. So all of the legal protections that endangered and threatened species tend to have are not really applied to scarlet macaw. So a lot of the legal protections that endangered species tend to have are not applied to scarlet macaws, even in these areas where scarlet macaws really need these protections. And one of the kind of interesting ways, and I don't think that we'll get too much into this because it's kind of a very interesting can of worms, but one of the ways that this has kind of been circumvented a little bit is that the Central American scarlet macaw is actually currently recognized as a separate subspecies. And again, we won't get too much into this is a bit of science jargon, a little bit of where exactly you draw the line with species and subspecies. But there is a subspecies of scarlet macaw now that's the Central American scarlet macaw. It's the Ara macaw cynoptera. And it's recognized as legally distinct from the South American scarlet macaw, which does allow there to be some legal protections for this subspecies separate from the broader species. So you can say, well, the scarlet macaws are doing okay, but the Central American scarlet macaw needs some help here. And that has allowed there to be some more legal protections and also just some more focus on specifically these scarlet macaws and their troubles and conservation of them in Central America specifically.
And I think that's an important thing. I think one of the reasons why we're seeing this distinction between, Central American and, South American scarlet macaws is, it's a good thing. There's a distinction, but it's a bad thing because their habitat's becoming so fragmented that they are becoming separate populations, and separate and subspecies, as you mentioned. And I think that that's really been a challenge. That's been the challenge, is how to protect, localized populations. And this is one of the roles that many organizations in Central America, not just in Belize, but other places as well, which are trying to fight, is how to protect these species, which are increasingly having smaller and smaller population sizes, and areas to support their populations. And if you saw something as big and powerful as a scarlet macaw, imagine what's happening with some of the smaller parrots, which are also out there.
Yeah, and scarlet macaws especially, this does tie into a little bit of what's sometimes called umbrella species. I think we talked about this a bit with harpy eagles. In conservation, what happens a lot is that there ends up being a lot of focus on what's called charismatic species, which are kind of what it sounds like. It's the species that are very colorful, very well known. People really want to help these species. And though it may kind of take some attention away from other species that may not be quite as charismatic. You know, you're going to get some more support for the scarlet macaw than you might get for an endangered frog, for example. People don't always give a lot of money for frog conservation, which is a shame, in my opinion. I very much like frogs, but uh, but scarlet macaws, because their conservation does focus so much also on preserving areas of land for them and keeping these habitats connected. We've talked before about the Maya Rainforest Corridor as a conservation initiative and trying to combat this habitat fragmentation as much as possible. Uh, because all of these things that benefit scarlet macaws also benefit all the other species in the rainforest. Scarlet macaw conservation is important not only for this species, but for the rainforest as a whole. And then, of course, getting back into the ecological functions that scarlet macaws play, they are seed spreaders. They do spread all of these plant seeds all over the rainforest. Um, they're very important for maintaining the biodiversity of the rainforest and the ranges of these plants. You know, plant seeds can't really just grow legs and spread on their own, so they really depend on animals a lot of times to be able to spread them throughout their range. So you can see how the conservation of one animal in one place, not even the animal across its whole range, but even in just this one specific place, will really benefit the rainforest as a whole. And again, if you want more information about uh, the scarlet macaws in Central America and in Belize specifically, and the problems that are faced by scarlet macaws in Belize, and what a lot of people are really putting a lot of time and a lot of work into trying to help. First of all, visit the Belize Zoo, visit the Belize Zoo website, visit the Belize Zoo in person. And all of the people there are really experts in all of this. And then also, again, The Last Flight of the Scarlet Macaw is, I think, a really, really good resource for starting to understand these kind of very complicated problems, especially in rainforest ecology, through the lens of this one species.
I would also encourage you to go to our website for more information, especially our YouTube channel. We'll be posting some of the videos we've made, okay, of our interactions with scarlet macaws at the Belize Zoo, and especially our friend Ranger, who is an ambassador for their species at the Belize Zoo. Very animated, very, very, very intelligent. Okay, and a little bit of a troublesome guy. Okay, who, as you'll see in some of the videos, but there's really an interest to learn about them, and they're an amazing species. And it is definitely an inspiring animal, because when you see one of them, you really want to try to make a difference in protecting their habitat.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think scarlet macaws, like you said, not only are they beautiful animals, but they're very smart, very charismatic, very funny animals. Honestly, they're just it's really amazing to be able to see them in person.
Okay, Kayla, is there anything else you'd like to go over tonight?
I think that's a good overview of this month's inspiring animals. And again, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Please check out the information we have on scarlet macaws on our website and the Belize Zoo website as well, talking about their animal ambassadors. And as always, we hope to see you back next time for some more inspiring animals.
And if you have any animals you would like for us to cover on a future episode, please just drop me an email at michael@inspiredadventures.com. And Kayla and I will look into talking about that in one of our future episodes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening.
Hey there, this is Ashley from Inspired Adventures. Thanks for tuning into our podcast all about scarlet macaws. Since I know you're into these vibrant, talkative birds, I've got exciting news to share. Coming this summer, This Birdie Told Me, my brand new children's book and the third in our animal series. So get ready for color, curiosity, and a whole lot of squawk.